welcome, and we've just had a bit of a look into the book, and people have spoken about writing, about publishing, but I think the first question that I'd like to ask is what actually drove you, what inspired you to write this book? In the first place, we've heard there's so many books around, but what made this important to you to write this book?
Right, thank you for that question. I just want to give a small background to the book. Initially, when I was considering writing this book many years ago, I wanted to do it on my 50th birthday. I wanted it to coincide with that. And I was looking for a publisher, and I found this one in, I don't know, somewhere in Milton Keynes, and they're sort of worldwide. And the journey started. Well, this baby, like I said to Carla earlier, this baby wasn't developing in the womb. It got to a stage, it was about 6 months old, 6 months into pregnancy, and it stopped growing. And we needed a lot of work to do to get it back on track. But I missed the deadline for the 50th birthday, and I thought, yeah, I'm not going to write it, I'll just forget about it. But I had the manuscript, I had everything all down. And again, and I just want to use this opportunity to also thank my husband, because he pushed me really hard and said, when everything goes quiet about the book, he says, what's happening to the book? I said, I don't know. I do not know. I don't want to even talk about it. It has always been my passion to do finance or property, because my life suddenly comes bubbling when I'm talking about properties or I'm talking about finance. I don't even need to read any book, because it's all inside me, and everything is all practical. And so there was this need to bring this idea of Christians and wealth together in the same room. Because up till now, it seems that they're mutually exclusive. You can't be a Christian and be wealthy. Or you can't be wealthy and be a Christian. Well, I think we can do both. And I think that was one of the things that actually drove me to writing this book, that it is possible to be rich and to be a Christian, because the gospel is very expensive to give out or to propagate. So you don't come in with empty stomach and you're telling somebody who is not a Christian, say God loves you. Say, if God loves you, you are so wretched. Well, why should I be in your sort of environment? If that's the way your God loves, then I don't want to be part of him. So I think that's one of the things I really wanted to bring out of this book, to show that you can work on God's principles and be wealthy and a Christian, a good Christian.
So almost like an evangelistic tool, just using your finance and the health of your finances.
Yes, more or less, yes.
To show, okay, well, that's good. So now on reading this book, you seem to have some kind of a vendetta against credit cards. Now you mentioned that credit cards are bad and that that you should try and get rid of them, but do you really think it's realistic for somebody to live their life without a credit card?
You use the word vendetta. Yes, I will say yes. I am passionately against credit cards.
Okay, so let me ask you a question before you go any further. How many credit cards do you have?
None.
Oh, okay.
None. But if you have asked me this question about 4 or 5 years ago, I will say, anything that comes through the door, I sign it. And that's basically the way it was, because it was so easy. Like I said in the book, you don't even need to complete. They know your date of birth, they know your address, they know everything. So they fill it in. All you need to do is to sign it. And some of them even add the date to it. So you just sign it, and that's it. So I will say, yes, I hate credit card with passion. That's me. But I'm not saying it's completely bad or wrong to have it. But like anything in life, too much of something can be bad for you. So it's a question of finding the balance.
And so do you really think it is realistic to actually be able to have a life in these modern times without using a credit card?
To have a life.
Well, to function in life without a credit
Well,
card.
I think you can function in life without a credit card. You can. Now, I need to distinguish two things here, which, although you haven't mentioned that. The difference between a credit card and a debit card. Now, with the way the system has grown, you try booking a flight or a train ticket without a debit card, unless you have to physically go. And even sometimes when you go to Piccadilly, I think I've had that experience before. If you go to this train station, you find that it's actually cheaper for you to do it online than going there face to face or physically. So you find that the system is geared towards you using this plastic. But there are two types of plastic. If it's a debit card, fine, because the debit card is as good as your money. But it's a credit card that I am against. It is the credit card. But, like I said earlier, if you're able to use your credit card like you use your debit card, i.e. pay off when your bill comes, then it's good. But it's the temptation, because at the end of the day, we're human, we're flesh. You look at it and say, oh, well, I'll leave this the other month, I'll just pay the minimum payment. And then by the end of the second month, you now have 2 months. So it's sort of the creeping effect of the credit card system.
Okay, well, for those of us who've already read the book will know that it has exercises at the end, and it has lots of kind of, like, you even read that section about sort of giving advice on practical things to do, which is not, I mean, not all books are like that. So was it your intention to make this something that was practical? I mean, often, I mean, sort of, it's no novel. I mean, no. Yeah. Was it your intention to make it something that people would go back to, or? Yeah.
In the introduction, I did say it is not a bedtime story book. It is a practical book, because your finances is not a bedtime story. It's not a bedtime matter. If you know how many people, the sort of problems that people have because of the money problems or money worries or finances, then you know why this book is not a novel. It's not a Mills and Booms, if you know, that gives my age. It's not any kind of, oh, that was a good read, put it down. No, you have to have, it was deliberately done to be practical. So you want to say, yes, this is one tip I will use in my finances, and it will work for you.
Okay, so we've had an idea of why you wrote the book, a bit of an idea of how best to use it as something practical, as a manual, as a reference book almost. So if you were, and you've even given us some readings, so I'm going to ask you, if you were going to try to sum the book up in one little soundbite, as we're living in the age of slick politicians and the like, how would you sum up this book?
Develop a good money management habit. Good money management habits.
Okay. So this is all about setting, the
goals.
Setting goals and setting the foundations. Okay. So there's one more question before I wrap up and we go on to the actual launch of the book, and that is, the title of the book is Beyond the Lean Years, and it talks about life after the credit crunch, and it is a book which is very timely and which refers to the very specific economic times that we're in at the moment. But is it something really that you can see us taking forward once, so these things go in cycles, so when we're back in boom, which I'm praying that we will see again at some point, will this book still be relevant? Will this still be useful to us?
Yes, it will. Like you said, especially the economic atmosphere or situation, it goes in cycle. We remember those who were old enough to remember. I wasn't here, so I don't know. Those who remember the Depression years in the 1920s, and they said, oh, that's the worst that had ever happened, and they hope it wasn't going to happen again. And then we had in the 80s, you have the property bust, and then in the which came out of 91, and nobody ever thought that it would come down to the present situation, because the way the world does things, they use their wisdom. They completely abandon God's way of doing things, and they think they'll put system in place, the G20, the G7, and all the Gs, and they expect things to just turn around, or the quantitative easing, and that will help. But we have seen that it doesn't help unless they go back to basics. And even then, in the Bible, we're talking about, I think it's Exodus, it said, and Genesis, sorry, and there was another famine. If the beginning of most of the chapters is there was another famine, not like the one. If you note that, so there will always be economic crisis. We cannot eliminate it. But the most important thing is for us to position ourselves, so that whatever cycle we are in, or whatever point of the cycle it is, we have positioned ourselves not to go down with whatever is going down.
That's great. Well, thank you very much. For those of you who haven't read the book, I would advise you. I know you all think I'm biased. Maybe I am, but you really should take the opportunity to get a copy and to read it, because it is a very practical and useful manual for someone like me who's kind of starting out and sort of new in the work environment, and it gives you a lot of tips on income, on different income streams, and it's a very practical and useful guide on how to manage your money and how not to fall into some of those traps which people, like credit cards and borrowing, which people seem to take for granted as being the way you have to do things. And it was refreshing to read something, because actually I don't have a credit card either, but that's mostly just because I was scared. I didn't trust myself not to run into Selfridges and just buy everything. So I thought it was best for me not to have one, and it's refreshing to read something, even if it is from my own mother, that says that you can actually have a life living within your means, and that you don't necessarily have to be miserable whilst you're doing it. So yeah, thank you very much for giving us your thoughts, and yeah, so we will move on now to the launch. Oh wait, I think we've got a couple of reviews, and then we'll be moving on to the launch of the book, but thank you very much. Thank you.